Hello everybody, it's me Faith. In today's video, I wanted to talk about the naming of plants. When I did the video on the Orchidaceae family, I sort of touched on this topic, but I did not go into details. And in this video, I want to go into more detail. When I do a plant species video, I normally give the common name and the scientific name. The common name will typically be in Vedic, but common names can also be in English, Afrikaans, French, Portuguese, etc. The common names of plants are usually people and places specific. For example, in South Africa, Nguni people call Aloe ferox umhlaba, while white people call it bitter aloe. So within the same country, you have different groups of people calling the same plant with different names. The differences in plant names do not just lie on the racial level, but they are also found at the ethnic level. For example, among Nguni people, Aloe ferox is called umhlaba by Zulu people and ikhala by Xhosas or Xhosa people. And even amongst white people, you have English-speaking people who, depending on where you are in South Africa, who call Aloe ferox bitter aloe or red aloe. The same thing is true even for Afrikaans-speaking people. So in Afrikaans, aloe can either be called... Okay, just as a disclaimer, like the only Afrikaans that I know is Zevendelan Afrikaans, and no one on Zevendelan has ever spoken about Aloe ferox, so I don't know how to pronounce the common name of Aloe ferox in Afrikaans. So if I mispronounce the words, please don't leave nasty comments for me. Okay, so in Afrikaans, Aloe ferox can be bitter alwyn or bergalwyn. As you can see, the common names tend to vary even within the same country. It's not just the common names that tend to vary among the different groups of people. As I've also mentioned many times in the previous videos, the uses and preparation methods also tend to differ by culture, race, creed, caste, etc., etc. For example, if you Google how to prepare Aloe ferox, you'll notice that the majority of white people prepare Aloe ferox by extracting the gel-like flesh which is found inside the leaves, and this gel-like substance is then used to make juices as well as cosmetic products. This is very different from how my grandfather prepared Aloe ferox. My grandfather used to boil the whole leaf without removing the gel-like flesh inside the leaves, and he would drink the concoction as a tonic to cleanse the blood and to treat gastrointestinal issues and other things as well. I read a post on Quora. So Quora is a knowledge sharing platform. In Quora, a person normally asks a question and other people contribute their answers. So one person asked if they can boil aloe vera leaves and drink the liquid as medicine. I will link the question in the blog post so people don't think I'm slandering the platform. But I read the answers that people gave from that question, and the majority of the answers were no. In fact, I think it was all of them which said no, you shouldn't boil aloe. One reason that was given was that boiling the aloe will damage the nutrients inside the aloe. If you visit the Department of Agriculture, Forestry and Fishery website, I'll provide a link in the blog post. But if you visit the site, there's an article there that's written on preparing aloe. And there they say that you can boil the aloe leaves in water and then you can use the concoction for medicinal purposes to treat things like arthritis, eczema, toothache, sinusitis, conjunctivitis, stress, and stomach pains. Quora is an American social website, and Dove is a platform in South Africa. So it's a South African agricultural website. So the answers provided on both websites are probably correct for the audience of those websites. So for Americans, maybe drinking aloe is not healthy for them. And maybe for South Africans, it is. Remember, we've all evolved to adapt to the environment that we each find ourselves in. So our nature and our nurture have conspired to bring about our current state. Hence, the differences in what we do and how we do things. So for Americans, maybe due to their genetics and temperament, I don't know if that even plays a role, but like maybe due to their genetics, it might not be healthy for them to boil aloe and drink that. I don't know. I'm not an American. Anyways, the reason that common names differ is because of how people name things in different cultures and races. For example, the English names for aloe ferox are bitter aloe and red aloe. So the name bitter aloe comes from the fact that the sap in aloe ferox has a very bitter taste, and the name red aloe comes from the fact that the flowers of this type of aloe are reddish orange. The Zulu name umhlaba comes from the fact that the leaves edges are spiny, or ayahlaba. That's what you call something that's very spiny. Hence the name umhlaba. The common names are usually based on physical characteristics of plants, as you can see in the English as well as the Zulu name. The name for Aloe ferox is a physical description of the plant's physical characteristics. However, that's not always the case. Some names are actually based on what the plant is used to treat. For example, Indabulalo valo is used to treat uvalo. So the name actually tells you what the plant is used for. So these are just examples of how people name things, but different groups of people will name things in different ways. But because common names differ with different races, cultures, countries, etc., etc., let's say you only know the common name of a particular plant in your language, and you go to a herbalist that also only knows the common name of a particular plant in their language. Communication between these two people will be confusing, to say the least, and very challenging because they're not speaking the same language. Even if they do speak, let's say, for example, these are Nguni people or white people, but one white person knows aloe ferox is bitter aloe and the other one knows it as red aloe. They're talking about the same thing, but because the names are different, it's going to be confusing if one only knows it as this and the other one only knows it as this, to figure out what exactly they're talking about. So common names can create a confusion even amongst the same groups of people. To solve this problem of having so many common names, for example, the herbalist who sells the plants, they can try and learn the different common names. But like I said, even amongst the same groups of people, English speaking people, you have the same name having so many different common names. And if you think about it, in South Africa, we have 11 languages. I don't know how many common names there are for aloe ferox, but if you take it even further, on a global scale, we have like over 7,000 different languages. So for the herbalist to be able to sell to anyone in the world, they'll have to learn 7,000 different common names for the different plants. That is a lot, you know. It's gonna be a lot for somebody to learn or memorize the common names of all plants in all 7,000 languages. Even if it's just for the 11 South African languages, it still might be impossible for most people. So, because the common names of plants can vary depending on where you are in the world and who you're speaking to, a standard was created for all people to use when communicating with someone who might not know the common name for a particular plant. So, this standard is the same in all countries. And the reason that it's the same is so that wherever you are in the world and whoever you are speaking to, you can talk about the same plant, even though the plant has different common names. And this standard is what we call scientific names. Scientific names are universal names for biological species. You have scientific names for not just plants, but animals as well. And when I say animals, I mean human beings as well, because human beings are also animals. So basically, all living organisms have scientific names. Scientific names for plants are also known as botanical names. So these scientific names are binomial phrases, meaning they contain two words. So the first word in a scientific name is called a genus, and the second name is what's called a species. So both the genus and species are category rankings in the plant taxonomy. Plant taxonomy is the science of naming plants using a classification that is based on plant behavior, plant genetics, and the biochemical differences between plants. The plant taxonomy includes things like the domain, the kingdom, the phylum, the class, the order, the family, the genus, and the species. The scientific name only includes the last two categories, so that's the genus and the species. The genus usually starts with a capital letter, and the species name will be written in lower cases. The scientific name is usually in italics. Sometimes you underline it, but usually in italics, and it can be either in Greek or in Latin. An important thing to note about scientific names is that you don't have to be a scientist to use the scientific name. Scientific names do come in handy, especially in cases where the common names are the same in all species. I don't know if you still remember, I did a video on Isigqiki somkhovu, and the name Isigqiki somkhovu is a common name for most, if not all, species in the Encephalatus genus. If you want a specific type of Encephalatus, you have to know the specific scientific name or the exact scientific name, because the name Isigqiki somkhovu is not just for one species, it's for all species. So that's where scientific names come in handy. But scientific names, because they're in Greek or Latin, they can be a bit difficult to pronounce. I know sometimes I have difficulty pronouncing some of these scientific names, but they do come in handy. So in conclusion, both the scientific and common names of plants serve a very important purpose. So the common names are useful for communication amongst local people, and the scientific names help dispel the confusion that's created by the many different common names that are available for the same plant. That's it on this very short video. You can bala back in the comments. Thank you so much for listening. Don't forget to subscribe. Have a blessed weekend and bye.